Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. 20 years ago, I was about 6 months into living with my first serious boyfriend when I suggested that we adopt a puppy. I'd always wanted a dog, but I also knew it would be a great chance to see how ready for parenthood my boyfriend was. And so we adopted Oscar, a Jack Russell puppy, after we both fell in love with him down at the pound. From the moment we got him home, he became our very own tiny bundle of energy and mischief. With his bright eyes, perky ears, and playful demeanor, he kept us on our toes and filled each and every day with love, laughter, and reasonably small poops. But Oscar had a flaw, one big one. And while he adored my boyfriend and me, he despised the rats and mice that lived out back near our apartment building's dumpsters. We used to let him poop outside as part of his potty training, rewarding him with treats and penning him whenever he did so. But this one time, he quite literally smelled a rat by the dumpsters, and since Jack Russells were basically bred to be little vermin killers, something in Oscar's genetic memory set him off the edge. He used to bark at the dumpsters every time we took him outside, and since our apartment was on the ground floor, that was a daily event. But if we thought that he went crazy over just the scent of rats, it was nothing compared to how he reacted when he actually saw one. After that, the back of our building became a war zone, and after Oscar chased a rat so hard that he tried jumping over a fence to pursue it, we knew that we couldn't risk taking him back there again. If he got over that fence, he'd be gone, and there'd be nothing between him and the highway, which, as you can imagine, wasn't a prospect we wanted to entertain even for a second. Well, one day, the unthinkable happened. We woke up, and Oscar was gone. My boyfriend somehow failed to close the back door properly when he came home drunk the previous night. And then while we were asleep, Oscar had gotten out and had either jumped over the fence chasing those rats, found a gap in it to wiggle through, or even worse, someone had stolen him. I was distraught and so mad at my boyfriend. I didn't say a single word to him until he promised with all of his heart and soul to bring Oscar home or die trying. And yes, the die trying part was overly dramatic, but I appreciated how sorry he was, and I also appreciated the amount of effort he put into searching the neighborhood, knocking on doors, and putting up missing posters. But my boyfriend didn't stop there. He even went so far as to upload a missing dog post on our local Craigslist page. In a post titled Dog, my boyfriend uploaded a picture of Oscar along with his last known location. We also offered a reward to anyone who could reunite us with him. Then over the next 24 hours or so, I was asking, has anyone replied, about every 10 minutes. My boyfriend wouldn't say it, but I knew it was wrong to get my hopes up so much. Missing pet stories rarely end well, and I knew in my heart that my boyfriend was putting all that effort in purely out of guilt, not out of any genuine hope that we could bring Oscar home safely. But then, not even 48 hours later, my boyfriend got an email from someone who claimed to have found Oscar. The email basically said, "Hi there. I found a small dog wandering near the highway just the other day, so I put him in my truck and drove him home." A friend then told me about a lost dog post she'd spotted on Craigslist, and after checking it for myself, I realized that the dog I found was Oscar. He even responds to that name. The emailer left a phone number for us to call him on. After dialing it, my boyfriend and I were both ecstatic. The man on the other end of the phone sounded much older than us and had a very gruff voice, but he was also exceptionally friendly. He told us he'd been taking care of Oscar in our absence, feeding him cooked chicken and taking him for very careful walks using a leash that he'd made out of rope. Once I'd made a note of his address and promised the man that we'd swing by in the next few hours, I hung up, and the relief just poured over me. I thanked my boyfriend for all he'd done and told him that he was completely and utterly forgiven for letting Oscar slip out the back door. I then told him pretty much everything the guy had told me. But when I was done, there were 2 points my boyfriend seemed very unsure of. The first was that the guy had mentioned keeping Oscar in his basement. To me, this didn't raise any red flags, as the guy didn't know how far along Oscar was with his potty training and was probably keeping him in his basement to contain any sort of mess. I remember my boyfriend saying something like, "Oscar's in his basement? Why? If he's taking him for regular walks, Oscar won't even try to go to the bathroom on his couch. Why would he keep him in the basement?" I told him my own opinions on it and how that didn't bother me too much. But then the next thing that seemed to sort of dampen my boyfriend's excitement was the area of town that this guy said he lived in. He said something like, "That's not a great part of town. You shouldn't go alone." I wasn't born and raised where we were living at the time, so I'd always defer to him when it came to local knowledge. I was more than happy to go alone if it meant him not having to cancel plans, but in the end, he insisted. As we were driving towards the man's address, the streets became increasingly desolate. The houses were old and sagging, many with boarded-up windows and overgrown yards. I checked the address again on my phone, hoping that I'd made a mistake, but no, it was right. My boyfriend pulled the car up to the curb in front of this very dilapidated house. The paint was peeling, the lawn was a jungle of weeds, and the porch light flickered weakly even though it was still daytime. A man stood in the doorway waving at us. He looked ordinary enough, mid-40s, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans, but something about him felt very off. The man smiled, showing crooked teeth, and said Oscar was downstairs, then motioned for us to come inside. The house looked even worse up close. The windows were dirty, the porch creaked under my feet, and a faint mildew smell came from the open door. I stopped and looked at my boyfriend, and he gave me a small shake of his head. I asked if the man could just bring Oscar upstairs instead. His smile faded for a moment, but he said it was no problem and again told us to come in, sounding more insistent this time. My boyfriend spoke up and his voice was firm as he said we wouldn't go inside and that we'd wait outside instead. And the man's mood changed. He didn't seem as friendly anymore and looked a little annoyed. He said okay and then went back into the house, leaving the door open. My boyfriend leaned over toward me and whispered that something felt very off and that we should just leave. I whispered back, saying that we couldn't just leave without checking if Oscar was really there. My heart was pounding, torn between hope and fear. We waited, but the man didn't come back. Minutes passed, and my boyfriend checked his watch. His face was serious as he said, "We're leaving." Before I could say anything, the man came back to the doorway, and his face was blank now. No sign of the friendliness from earlier. He asked very flatly if we weren't coming in after all, and my boyfriend repeated that we weren't. We started to walk away. But the man just stared at us as we left. Then, as we reached the car, he called out in a very casual tone, but something about it felt wrong, like there was more behind his words, and we drove off in silence. My chest felt tight, and I couldn't decide if I was more upset or just uneasy. After a while, my boyfriend broke the silence, and he said he didn't think the man ever even had Oscar. The house, the neighborhood, the way that guy acted, it all just seemed like some big trap. The thought made my skin crawl, and I couldn't stop wondering what might have happened if we had gone inside. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying everything, especially the way the man's face changed when we said no. I kept asking myself what would have happened if we'd stayed. The next morning still felt uneasy. I looked up that house online, and my stomach dropped when I saw that it had been foreclosed years ago. It wasn't supposed to have anyone living inside it. I called the police and told them what happened. They said they'd check it out, but they didn't seem very worried. A week later, an officer called me back and said they'd found something in the house but wouldn't say what. All they told me was that I was lucky not to have gone inside. We never found Oscar. And sometimes late at night, I think about that man in that doorway. I wonder how many people weren't as lucky as us, and how close I came to being one of them. Back when I was younger, a little reckless and eager to find love, I thought it'd be a great idea to check out the personal section on Craigslist. Most of the ads I saw were either blatantly fake or downright creepy, but after scrolling for a while, one caught my eye. It was very short and straightforward, looking for something casual. Just broke up with my boyfriend. Don't want anything serious. Message me if you're interested. Something about it seemed genuine, and the attached photo sealed the deal. This girl was gorgeous, like, way out of my league, so I decided that I'd send her a message. She replied almost immediately, and things moved fast. Really fast. Within a few exchanges, she was sending provocative pictures. I couldn't believe my luck. But something felt off, like it was way too good to be true. Half joking, I sent her a message: if this is real, send me a picture with my name written on a piece of paper. To my shock, she did. And that was all the proof I needed to know she was real. We kept talking, and she told me that she wasn't looking for anything serious, just a no-strings-attached hookup. Her ex had just moved out and she wasn't ready for a relationship, she just wanted to have some fun. She gave me her address and told me to come over. To make sure everything was legit, I called her, and she answered on the first ring. Her voice was just as alluring as her photos. She said that she was at home, waiting for me. It all felt like a dream I was going to wake up from at any second, but it wasn't. It was real. When I pulled up to the address, it was a quiet suburban neighborhood. The house looked normal, with a neatly trimmed lawn and a long driveway. I called her again to let her know I was there. No answer. I tried again, still nothing. I started to feel uneasy, but I convinced myself I was overthinking it. Maybe she was just in the bathroom or had stepped away from her phone. Trying to shake off the nerves, I got out of the car and walked toward the house. That's when I saw them, two men standing in the window, staring me down as I walked up the driveway. They looked extremely sketchy, like they'd stepped straight out of a police lineup. One had a shaved head and a scowl, while the other was wiry, with tattoos covering his arms. My blood ran cold. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to get out of there. Without a second thought, I turned and sprinted back to my car. My heart pounded as I jumped in, locked the doors, and sped off. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't stop glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see them chasing after me. When I finally got home, I tried to calm myself down. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe those guys had nothing to do with her. But deep down, I knew better. About an hour later, I got a text from the girl: "You're a loser." That was all it said. Then, "That was my boyfriend and we were just messing with you." I stared at the message, feeling a mix of anger and relief. So much for the ex part, right? I tried to brush it off as some sick joke. They probably got a kick out of scaring guys like me. It was messed up, sure, but at least I was okay. I guess. But a few days later, local news told a much darker story. A man had answered a Craigslist ad in that same neighborhood. When he showed up, two men ambushed him. They beat him, robbed him, and left him barely alive. He ended up in the hospital fighting for his life. Police said it was a setup, and the description of the house matched the one I had been at. A cold chill ran down my spine. I couldn't stop thinking about how close I'd come to being their victim. If I hadn't noticed those guys in the window, I might not have made it out. The thought haunted me for a long time. These weren't just pranksters messing around. They were predators, willing to hurt someone for a quick payday. They lured me in with fake promises and a pretty face, and I'd almost fallen for it. Even now, I can't shake the memory, the way those men stared at me, unblinking, as if I'd already been caught in their trap. The relief I felt when I drove away was eventually replaced by a sickening realization: I'd been extremely lucky. The man on the news wasn't so fortunate. And I can't help but wonder how many others had fallen for that exact same trap. I met him through a Craigslist personals ad. His posts weren't anything fancy, just kind of awkward and sweet. It said something like, "Looking for someone to grab a drink with, laugh a little, and see where it goes." It caught my attention because it felt real. We started swapping emails, and he came off as funny and kind, maybe a little rough around the edges, but not in a bad way. After a week of chatting, we agreed to meet up in person. The bar was crowded, but we found a quiet corner to sit and talk. Right away, I noticed that he had this natural charm about him. He was funnier and way more engaging in person than I expected. He made me laugh, and the way he listened and responded made it feel like he'd be a great listener, and maybe, at some point, a very attentive boyfriend. As the night went on, he suggested heading to a nearby pool hall to continue enjoying each other's company. And I thought, why not? I had driven, so I offered to take him there. At the pool hall, we played a few games and the conversation kept flowing. He made me laugh so much that I almost forgot we'd only just met. Then suddenly, his phone buzzed on the table. He looked at the screen, and his face sort of dropped, and then everything changed. "I need to tell you something," he said. I froze, not really sure what was coming. Convicted felon. I just got out of prison. My mind started spinning. I didn't even have time to process that before he added, "And I have a girlfriend. I live with her, but it's not serious. I'm just staying there until I get back on my feet." I was completely blindsided. This man who had been charming and funny all evening had just thrown all of this at me like it was no big deal. Then he added one more thing: she just texted me. She walked into the bar earlier and saw us together. She knows I'm with you. In that moment, I knew the date was over. I wanted to get out of there, but I'd driven us, and I didn't feel right just leaving him stranded. I told him I'd take him back to his car, but the vibe on the drive was completely tense and uncomfortable. As we drove, the alcohol must have really hit him, because he started crying, just quiet tears at first, then full-on sobbing. He kept apologizing over and over, saying how much he regretted everything. I didn't know what to say. Then, out of nowhere, he reached for the car door handle. Panic rose up inside of me and I yelled, "We're on the goddamn highway." He didn't seem to care. He was crying so hard, it was like he wasn't even hearing me. I hit the child locks as fast as I could. I yelled at him, trying to stay calm, but inside I was terrified. I didn't know what he was going to do next. The rest of the drive felt like it took forever. He kept mumbling and crying, and I just focused on getting us back to the bar as fast as possible. When we finally got there, I let him out and watched him stumble to his car. As soon as he was out of sight, I drove away as fast as I could. I thought that was the end of it. But a few days later, I got a message from an unknown number. It was his girlfriend, and my stomach dropped. She sent pictures of her face, bruised and swollen, with a split lip. She told me he'd beaten her up after our date. She'd confronted him about seeing me, and that's how he reacted. I felt sick. This man who had made me laugh and seemed so sweet at first was a violent monster. I couldn't believe I'd spent an entire evening with him, laughing and having fun, completely unaware of what he was capable of. His soon-to-be ex-girlfriend and I started talking more after that. She told me all about the things he'd done to her, and it was horrifying. Not long after, she left him for good, and we actually became friends. It's strange how something so terrible can lead to something good, but I guess that's life. That night changed me. I learned to trust my gut and pay attention to those red flags. If something feels off, it probably is. Looking back, I can't believe how close I came to being another one of his victims. And it serves as a reminder to be careful, and to never underestimate what someone is capable of. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.